Section 38 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Purgatorio, Canto 4. Antipurgatory, the first ledge. Those who neglected repentance until death.
Whene'er, because of pleasure or of pain received by any faculty of ours, our soul is wholly centred thereupon, it seems to heed no other faculty. And this is 'gainst that wrong belief which holds that one soul in us or another burns. Therefore, when anything is heard or seen which toward it holds the soul intently turned, time passes by, and one perceives it not, since one thing is the faculty which harks, and that which holdeth all the soul another. This last is bound, as 'twere, the former free. Of this I real experience had, while hearing and wondering at that spirit, for the sun had climbed up 50 full degrees at least, though I had not perceived it, when we came to where those souls cried out to us together,
"The place which you are asking for is here."
Oft doth a farmer, when the grapes grow dark, close up a wider opening in a hedge with but a little forkful of his thorns, than was the entrance there, through which my leader, and I behind him, mounted all alone, when once the crowd had gone away from us. One climbs San Leo, and then descends to Noli. One wins the summit of Bismantova, helped solely by one's feet. But one up here would have to fly, with the swift wings I mean and plumes of great desire, behind the guide who gave me hope and furnished me with light. As up within the cloven rock we climbed, its walls on each side closely hemmed us in, while under us the ground both feet and hands required. When on the high cliff's upper edge we were, and out upon the open slope, "Which way, my teacher, shall we go?" said I, and he to me,
"Take thou no backward step. Keep gaining ground behind me up the mount, until some guide who knows appear to us."
So high the summit was that it surpassed our sight, and steeper far the slope than were a line from centre to mid-quadrant drawn. Weary was I when I began to speak. "O gentle father, turn around and see how I remain alone, unless thou stop."
"Draw thyself up, my son, as far as there,"
he said, and somewhat higher pointed out a ledge on that side, circling all the hill. His words so spurred me that I forced myself to crawl behind him on my hands and knees, until the girding ledge was 'neath my feet. There both of us sat down, and faced the east, whence we had made the ascent, for looking back upon a traversed course is wont to help. First to the shores below I turned mine eyes, then raised them to the sun, and was amazed that we were smitten by it on our left. The poet well perceived that I was gazing dumbfounded at the chariot of the light, which now was rising between the north and us.
"If Castor,"
said he then to me,
"and Pollux were in the company of yonder mirror, which up and down in turn conducts its light, thou wouldst the zodiac's ruddy part behold, revolving still more closely to the Bear's unless it issued from its ancient path. If thou wouldst understand how this can be, collect thy thoughts within thee, and imagine both Zion and this mount so placed on earth that both of them one sole horizon have, and different hemispheres, and thou wilt see how that the road which Phaeton could not take, alas for him, must pass this mount on one, while passing that one on the other side, if thine intelligence but clearly heed."
"Surely, my teacher, never have I seen," said I, "as clearly as I now perceive, where once my mind appeared to be at fault, how the mid-circle of supernal motion, which in a certain art is called equator, and ever tween the sun and winter stays, lies toward the north, for reasons given by thee, as far on this side as the Hebrew people ever beheld it toward the heated parts. But if it please thee, I would gladly know how far we have to go, because the mount higher ascends than eyes of mine can rise."
"Such is this mountain,"
said he then to me,
"that always hard to climb at first below, it pains one less the higher one ascends. Hence, when so pleasant to thee it shall seem that going up shall be to thee as easy as floating with the current in a boat, thou then shalt have attained this pathway's end. Hope there to rest thee from thy breathless toil. No more I answer, this I know for truth."
When he had ended what he had to say, the voice of one near by cried out,
"Perhaps ere that shall happen thou wilt need to sit."
On hearing this, we both of us turned round and saw a massive boulder on our left, which neither I nor he had seen before. Thither we drew, and there some persons were who lingered in the shade behind the rock, as one is wont to do through indolence. And one of them, who weary seemed to me, was sitting with his arms around his knees, and down between the latter held his face. "O my sweet lord," said I, "turn thine eyes on yonder man, who shows himself to be more lazy than if Sloth his sister were." Then turning round toward us and giving heed, he moved his face no more than o'er his thigh, and said,
"Go up now, thou that active art."
I then knew who it was, nor did the strain, which quickened still my breath a little, hinder my going to him. Yet when at his side I was, he barely raised his head, and said,
"Hast thou at last seen why it is the sun driveth his car o'er thy left shoulder here?"
His lazy actions and his few short words impelled my lips to smile a little. Then, "Belacqua," I began, "I grieve for thee no more, but tell me why thou sittest here. Art waiting for a guide, or hast thou now merely resumed thy customary mood?" And he,
"What, brother, is the use of climbing? The bird of God, who at the gate is seated, would not allow me to approach the pangs. The sky must first turn round me here outside, as long as ever in my life it did, since I delayed good sighs until the end, unless before then I be helped by prayers arising from a heart that lives in grace. Of what avail are those unheard in heaven?"
But now the poet, climbing on ahead, was saying,
Come now on with me. Thou seest that our meridian by the sun is touched, and that already from the Ganges banks night covers up Morocco with her feet.
End of Purgatorio, Canto 4. Section 39 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Purgatorio, Canto 5. Antipurgatory, the second ledge. The negligent who died by violence.
Already had I parted from those shades, and in my leader's steps was following on, when one behind me, pointing with his finger, cried out,
"See how the light seems not to shine upon the left side of that lower man, who seems to act like one that's still alive."
Hearing this speech, I turned mine eyes, and saw that with astonishment they gazed at me alone, and at the broken light.
Why is thy mind so sore perplexed?
Then said my teacher,
That thou slackenst thy pace? What carest thou for what is whispered here? Follow thou me, and let the people talk. Firm as a tower remain, which never shakes its top, however hard the winds may blow. For from himself he ever turns his mark, in whom one thought wells up behind another, for each of them impairs the other's strength.
What could I say in answer, save, I come? And this I said, tinged slightly with the colour which sometimes makes one worthy of forgiveness. Meanwhile, a little way ahead of us, some people crosswise o'er the slope were coming, singing the Miserere verse by verse. When they became aware that through my body I gave no passage to the rays of light, they changed their chant into a long, hoarse
"Oh!"
And two of them, acting as messengers, ran out to meet us, and inquiring, said,
Cause us to know what kind of life is yours.
My teacher answered,
Ye may go your way, and unto those that sent you out report that real flesh this man's body is. And if, as I suppose, they stopped because they saw his shadow, they've been answered well enough. If they respect him, it may profit them.
I never saw ignited vapours cleave at nightfall an unclouded sky, or break so rapidly from August clouds at sunset, that these returned not up in shorter time. And once there, with the rest they veered toward us, as would a troop that ran without a curb.
These people who are crowding us are many,
The poet said,
and come to beg of thee. Therefore go on, and listen on thy way.
O soul that goest to be glad!
They cried, as on they came,
With those limbs which thou hadst when thou wast born, a little stay thy steps.
Recall, if thou hast e'er seen one of us, that yonder thou mayst carry news of him.
Why, pray, dost thou go on? Ah, why not stop?
We all were slain of old by violence, and sinners were until our latest hour. Then light from heaven so caused us to beware, that we, repentant and forgiving, issued from life at peace with God, who in our hearts stirs us with grievous longings to behold him.
And I, howe'er I gaze upon your faces, none do I recognize. And yet, if aught within my power can please you, well-born souls, ask it, and I will do it, by the peace which, following the feet of such a guide, hath now become my quest from world to world. And one began,
Each trusts in thy good help without an oath, provided lack of power cut not thy good will short. Hence I, who speak alone before the others, beg of thee, if e'er thou see the country which extends between your Romagna and the land of Charles, be courteous to me with thy prayers in Fano, that supplications do be made for me, to help me purge away my grievous sins. It was from there I came, but those deep wounds whence flowed the blood wherein my life resided were given me in the Anteronori's lap, where I had trusted I should be most safe. The Lord of Este, who was angry with me beyond the bounds of justice, had it done. Yet toward La Mira I had only fled. When at Oriago I was overtaken, still yonder would I be where people breathe. Toward the lagoon I ran, whose reeds and mire so hampered me I fell, and there a pool formed from my veins I saw upon the ground.
Then said another,
So may that desire which draws thee to the lofty mount be granted. With kindly pity, prithee, help thou mine. I Montefeltro was, I am Buonconte. Sciavana cares not for me, nor do others. Hence among these I go with head bowed down.
And I to him, What force was it, or chance, caused thee to stray so far from Campaldino, that never hath thy burial place been known?
Oh,
he replied,
a river called Arciano flows crosswise at the Casentino's foot, and takes its rise among the Apennines above the Hermitage. There, where its name is lost, I came, a fugitive on foot, pierced through the throat, and staining with my blood the plain. And there it was I lost my sight, and ended speech with Mary's name. And there I fell, and all alone my flesh remained. The truth I tell thou among the living, God's angel took me, while the one from hell cried out,
Why dost thou rob me, thou from heaven? Thou bearest hence this man's eternal part, because of one small tear which takes him from me. But I shall with the rest deal otherwise.
Well know'st thou how damp vapours in the air, as soon as they ascend to where the cold affects them, into water change again. He joined that wicked will, which asks for naught but evil, with intelligence, and stirred the mists and wind, by power his nature gave. The valley thereupon, when day was spent, he covered o'er with fog from Prato Magno up to the mountain chain, and made the skies so lowering o'er it, that the pregnant air to water turned. The rain poured down, and what the soil absorbed not, reached the rivulets. Then, having joined the torrent brooks, it rushed so swiftly toward the royal stream that naught could hold it back. The swift Arciano then, hard by its outlet, found my frozen body, and, as it swept it on into the Arno, loosened the cross which with my arms I made upon my breast, when sorrow's pain o'erwhelmed me. Along its banks and bed it rolled me on, then covered me, and wrapped me with its spoils.
Prithee, when to the world thou hast returned, and when from thy long journey thou art rested.
After the second spirit said the third,
Do thou remember me, who Pia am. Siena made me, Maremma me made. He knoweth what this means, who previously had, in betrothal, ringed me with his gem.
End of Purgatorio, Canto 5. Section 40 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Purgatorio, Canto 6. Antipurgatory, the negligent who died by violence. Addressed to Italy and Florence.
Whene'er a game of dice is broken up, The one who loses, sorrowing, stays behind, and learns as sadly he repeats the throes, while with the other all the people leave. One goes before, one grasps him from behind, and at his side one asks to be remembered. And he stops not, but that one heeds, and this. The one whose hand he takes no longer crowds, and from the throng he thus defends himself. E'en such as he was I in that dense crowd. For as I this and that way turned my face, and promised each, I freed myself therefrom. Here was the Aretine who met his death from Rinditaco's cruel arms, and he who, running madly in pursuit, was drowned. Here Frederick Novello prayed with hands outstretched, and he of Pisa, who induced worthy Marzucco to reveal his strength. Count Orso I beheld there, and the soul through spite and envy from its body parted, and not, so he maintained, through crime committed. Pierre de la Brosse I mean. And here, while still on earth, let Brabant's lady see to it, that 'mong the worse flock she be not for this. When I was free from each and all those shades, who only prayed that others pray for them, that their becoming holy might be sped, it seems that thou deniest, I began, O thou my light, expressly in a text, that prayer can cause a change in heaven's decrees. And yet these people only pray for this. Could it then be that this their hope is vain, or is thy saying not quite clear to me? And he to me,
That which I wrote is clear, nor yet delusive is this people's hope, if it be looked at with a healthy mind. For justice stoops not from her lofty height, because love's ardour all at once fulfils what he who dwelleth here must satisfy. And there where I decided on this point, the fault was not made good again by praying, because the prayer discordant was with God. Yet in so deep a doubt decide thou not, unless she bid thee do so, who a light shall be between thine intellect and truth. I know not if thou understand. I speak of Beatrice. Thou'lt see her up above, smiling and happy, on this mountain's top.
and I, let's go then, Lord, with greater haste, for now I grow not weary as before, and see the hillside casts its shadow now.
We shall go forward with this day,
He answered,
as long as we are able, but the case is otherwise than what thou deemest it. Ere thou shalt be up there, thou him shalt see return, who now so shields him with the hill that thou dost not compel his race to break. But yonder see a soul who all alone is seated, and toward us is looking now. He will point out to us the quickest way.
We came to him. O Lombard soul, how full of self-respect and noble scorn thou wast, and in the moving of thine eyes how slow and dignified. Naught did he say to us, but let us go our way, and only gazed as would a couching lion in repose. Virgil, meanwhile, drew near to him, and begged that he would show to us the best ascent. And he to his request made no reply, but asked us of our country and condition, and my kind leader was with
Mantua,
beginning, when the self-collected shade from where he was sprang up to meet him, saying,
O Mantuan, I am Sordello of thy town.
and each the other thereupon embraced. Ah, Italy, thou slave, thou inn of woe, ship without pilot in a mighty storm, not queen of provinces, but house of shame. So instant ready was that noble soul, but at the sweet sound of his city's name, to welcome here his fellow citizen. And yet within thee now thy living sons are not exempt from war, and those one wall and moat enclose upon each other prey. All round thy coastline search its shores, poor wretch, and then within thy bosom look, and learn if any part of thee be blessed with peace. What boots it that Justinian rearranged thy bridle, if thy saddle vacant be? Had it not been for that, thy shame were less. And ye, ah ye that ought to be devout, and so let Caesar in his saddle sit, if well ye heeded God's advice to you, behold how wild this animal has grown, through being uncorrected by the spur, since ye first set your hands upon her rein. O German Albert, thou that dost forsake this creature now become untamed and wild, and oughtest to bestride her saddle bows, May some just judgment from the stars befall thy blood, and may it so unheard of be and plain that it may frighten thy successor. For held by greed of lands outside its bounds, thou and thy father also have allowed the empire's garden to become a waste. Come see the Montagues and Capulets, Monaldi and Filipeschi, careless man, already troubled those, and these in dread. Come, come, thou cruel man, and see the oppression of thy nobility, and right their wrongs. And thou shalt see how safe is Santa Fior. Come see thy Rome, that widowed and alone is shedding tears, and day and night is calling. Why dost thou not, my Caesar, stay with me? Come see the people, how they love each other. And if for us no pity move thy soul, come then and shame thee for thine own renown. And, if I be allowed, O Jove supreme, thou that for us wast crucified on earth, are thy just eyes too turned away elsewhere? Or in thy counsels' depths art thou in this a preparation making for some good, from our perception utterly cut off? For all Italia's towns are full of tyrants, and a Marcellus every churl is deemed, who comes to play a party henchman's role. My Florence, well mayst thou be satisfied with this digression, which concerns thee not, thanks to thy people, who look out for that. Many at heart are just, but slow to shoot, lest to the bow uncounselled they should come. But thy folk on their lips alone are just. Many refuse to bear the common burden, but thy folk eagerly respond, and cry, although uncalled, I'll load myself therewith. Be joyful then, since thou hast cause to be, thou that art rich, that peaceful art, and wise. Whether I speak the truth, results conceal not. Athens and Lacedaemon, they that framed the ancient laws, and were so civilized, in living well made but a little mark compared with thee, that dost so carefully provide thee, that thy fine October spinning as far as mid-November reaches not. How many times within thy memory hast thou changed laws and coinage, offices and customs, and thy membership renewed? And if thou well recall and face the light, thou'lt see thy likeness to a suffering woman, who on a feather bed can find no rest, but seeks, by tossing, to relieve her pain.
End of Purgatorio, Canto 6.